Congressman Scott Perry is one of the most impressive men I've had the privilege of getting to know in public life. He has served in the United States Congress since 2013. He represents the 10th District of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. He has served on, among other things, the Homeland Security Committee, including as the chairman of its Oversight Subcommittee in the last Congress. He's on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee today, as well as on the House Foreign Affairs Committee. But in addition to all of that, he has served for almost 40 years in the United States Army, including as a pilot of virtually every rotary wing aircraft in the inventory, and as an instructor pilot. He resigned his commission in March of this year, retiring as a brigadier general, and I'm proud to call him a very good friend as well as a much admired leader of our country. Congressman Scott Perry, come on up here and talk about it.
Thank you, Frank, and thanks to all of you for being here. I'm glad that somebody in America is awake. And I think about, well, I think about just what I read on the docket for today, and I suspect that probably a lot of us will leave here depressed. And I don't know what the highlights or what the what's going to motivate. Well, we're motivated, but what's going to make us feel good about the direction we're currently taking? I mean, I think what we're all talking about is the obvious problem and the obvious challenge that we see, but we're not finding, in my opinion, a lot, especially from right across the street here, is a whole lot of solutions, a whole lot of vision, and a whole lot of being prepared. But Frank wanted me, we could all talk. This is a fascinating list of topics here, and I'd love to stay and listen to every one of them. And you didn't have to cut the young gentleman short. I was interested in the other questions. The financing is important too. So, but here I am. So I'm going to talk a little bit about 5G, and there's probably people in the room that are more informed, educated than I am. I'm just a lowly member of Congress, but we look around. And it's pretty obvious. I mean, the president talks about the fact that we cannot afford to lose this race for 5G. And I'm thinking to myself, well, yeah, I agree with that, but I'm not sure the race isn't substantially lost already. And that's unfortunate, but just is what it is. And I think a lot of people don't recognize, understand, internalize what 5G is. I don't have one with me because it makes, this thing. I mean, if we socialized healthcare like we socialized the fact that every single person in the country has one of these, we'd be way further ahead. But the point is that every person does have one of those. And even if you don't have one of those, I was in a meeting, Frank, you might have been there, where Mike Flynn, this is a couple years ago, told us, don't leave your toaster plugged in. And we kind of chuckled. And he said, I'm not chuckling. Don't leave your toaster plugged in. Whether it's your toaster, your television, your Fitbit, your car, your everything is connected. And it's connected to something. And the something is this network, which maybe it's 4G, maybe it's 3, but it's going to be 5G and beyond. And who has access and who controls that? It's like it's literally the hand that rocks the cradle. And look, I kind of live in the paradigm of a great patriot and someone I admire, and I suspect most of you do, which is Ronald Reagan, who said, in this instance, as many others, you got to trust but verify. But in this instance, you must verify and then probably still not be too trustworthy, right? Look, trust is born out of continued opportunities to be earned. And continuously, unfortunately, in this space, China has showed its willingness to say one thing and do another. They are a surveillance state. I mean, if you think about the fact that they from a legislative, from a legal standpoint, incentivize and almost demand that every individual and every business concern collect information and bring it back. I mean, it's breathtaking to me. Look, I'm so thrilled that President Trump has taken the stances that he has, because no other president has been willing to do it at all, in my opinion. Every time I see the president, if there's a moment to get the subject in, I want to tell him to go further, push the throttle the whole way. And to me, it should be fairly simple, our policy, whether it's 5G or China, just in general. And I know he's trying to get a good trade deal, and we need to have a good deal. I don't know. Well, I guess we have to have one with China, but I think it's actually be more important to have it with some of the surrounding countries. But be that as it may, if we're not getting to where we need to get to me, what we should be doing as a starting position, whether it's 5G, whether it's trade in general, or whether it's student visas or visas of any kind, is treat China just like they treat us. That seems fair, right? We could just say, look, things aren't working out real well on our side of the ocean here, so here's what we're going to do just to level the playing field. Everything you do regarding us, that's what we're going to do regarding you. And then we can start from there in a negotiation. I mean, I'm a proud Penn Stater, and Penn State does a lot of work for the United States military, and it just three and a half weeks ago showed up in the list of all the universities that were compromised by China. Right? We don't know the extent; it's classified. But I wonder, and it doesn't have to be a Confucius Institute. I mean, if they send a student, we should know, because they have said the student is collecting. The student is collecting, and so unfortunately, look, we love a country where you are innocent until proven guilty, but they have said that by their actions and by their policies, they're essentially guilty until proven innocent, and at least in this regard, and even NATO warned that adopting the technology. This is not only a security risk. If you look at this list of topics today, all the information that goes into every single one of these topics is gleaned from this stuff, and every one of us has it on us, and they're the ones that are going to glean it. There are essentially, I think, 4 companies across the globe that deal with this kind of technology. Of course, there's ZTE and Huawei. There are Sweden's Ericsson and Finland's Nokia. That accounts for essentially about 70% of the global telecom hardware industry. None of that is located in America. And why is that? Well, look, we're busy doing other things. Like, we've been sleeping here, and look, if they want to produce that stuff and they do a good job, God bless them. We've said that all around the world, whether it's electronics, whether it's textiles, whether it's some heavy machinery, and we've just been willing to let them do that without recognizing, understanding, or acknowledging the ramifications. And all of a sudden, it's not really all of a sudden. We just woke up all of a sudden, and here we are. And, of course, they've been very willing to undercut anybody else. I think it's somewhere between 60 and 80%. Right? They'll subsidize the hardware and install it, and then you buy the service. And of course, they've got all. Yeah, they're going to be good stewards of the information. Just take their word for it. And and we're in the mindset in America that we compete with each other, and that's how the best innovation happens. They compete by stealing ours and improving upon it, and then selling it at highly subsidized rates, and gleaning their strategic objectives from it, which is all the information about every single habit you have, all the information about your financial transaction, military and security, national security information, and every single thing else that might matter to you, where we drive, how we drive, what time we wake up in the morning, what things we like to eat. And all that is information that is useful when times get difficult in our relationship. And I suspect that times are going to get difficult in our relationship unless one of us changes, right? Unless America wants to continue to be the global hegemon that is a benevolent hegemon, where we keep the sea lanes open around the globe and we are the beacon of civil rights and freedom around the globe. Or we could have China do it, and we could just accept that. But I suspect most Americans won't accept that. And we're going to come to what we call in the cavalry a meeting engagement. And information and intelligence is really, really important. I was privileged for 6 years to represent the town of Gettysburg. In the town of Gettysburg, something phenomenal happened in the United States a couple hundred years ago, just about. And And I will tell you, the South would have won that battle and probably the war except for some poor information flow and bad information, right? Information flow because Lee orders his generals to do one thing and they saw fit to do another. By the way, his cavalry was goofing off about 40 miles away somewhere else and didn't make it to the fight in time. But also information about when when the Union's cannons, when their artillery was spent or not spent, and Lee said, the sound of the guns have stopped. I think it's time to attack. And just about the time in the Peach Orchard that the Union rolled up whole new batteries of fresh artillery and annihilated the Confederate forces out on the 1.5-mile open stretch of where they were marching shoulder to shoulder against the Union. If the Chinese control that kind of information, the battle is already over, unfortunately, and we can't have a Gettysburg where we're in that situation. So I think the problem, among other things, is that we're just completely, and you can see it, we've become completely reliant upon their technology because of the cost of it and because of how pervasive it is, and it's just been easy. And from my standpoint, we don't have. I want to use the term, we don't have a coherent strategy, but that might be a little too much too. I'm not sure if we have a strategy, and if we have one, they certainly haven't informed Congress, and I doubt that they've informed the American people. And it's going to take some changes in the way we do business. That's just that we're going to have to recognize that this is essentially controlling the speech that we have among one another because we speak through these devices, right? And we're just not used to that in America. We have the First Amendment, and we don't like to restrict and direct and so on and so forth, but that's as simple and as in-depth as it is. Every single bit of our communications will either be controlled by the United States of America and our benevolence and our wish to be free and preserve privacy and ensure the integrity of our intelligence information, or will be controlled by someone else. And they might have the goodwill to do that for us, but they might not. And if there are strategic adversaries that have an interest in overtaking us, which, oh, by the way, they do in this case, I suspect they might not be as benevolent. They might wait a while till the time is right, but they will be there gleaning all that information and controlling it. And look, the president talks about fake news, but that's not, the United States purveyors of fake news aren't the only ones on the planet. And there's plenty other ones around, and China wants to be and is one of them. And all we're doing by allowing them in this 5G space to be the leaders and proliferate is to proliferate more of their propaganda, and they're happy. We're over here on this side of the street fighting about a letter from the Attorney General to the Special Counsel and the President and what he said and why he said it, and couldn't he just accept the investigate? We're doing all that kind of stuff, right? Nobody's doing this in this country. In China, they're doing this. In China, they're very focused, right? They love their country too, and they get past, it appears to me, a lot of their political differences for the bigger plan. We seem to get mired in our political difference, and the bigger plan never comes to fruition. And while we fiddle, our country burns, right? So we got to create a policy environment that not only allows, but that incentivizes greatly the domestic production of this technology, not just to be ahead of the Chinese for 5G. We have to understand the world has changed. These devices and this interconnectivity between people is not going to get less over time as long as technology in the 21st century, as we know it, marches forward. It's going to become more apparent and evident and involved and inexorably mixed within our lives, entwined within our lives. And so we have to start thinking about that, not only for right now, but for forever, and have a strategy to dominate that space, not necessarily and just for a national security standpoint, but for everything it portends, whether it's the culture, whether it's our financial situations, what have you. And Republicans, Democrats, conservatives, liberals, anything else in between, we're gonna have to, put those other things aside, and get together for America. And that's not where we are right now, but it has to happen. It simply has to happen. So God bless you. Thanks for what you do. We appreciate your involvement. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
We are pressed for time, but we will take a question. We'll start with you, ma'am, because we missed you the last time.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm Simone Gao.
Simone?
Yes, producer and host of Zooming In, in-depth report program from NTD TV. So in one of my episodes, I compared President Reagan to President Trump. In 1980s, President Reagan used economic warfare as essentially a means, like a tool to defeat the Soviet Union. His goal is we win, they lose. So my question is, do you think President Trump should do the same instead of just getting a good deal from the trade war? Should this whole thing go beyond trade itself?
I believe it should, and I do applaud this president. Like I said, he's gone further than any in modern history regarding China in this regard. However, I think that we also have to be mindful of the time that this president has. And look, China's watching, Russia's watching, Iran's, all our adversaries are watching. They watch the political environment here as well. And if they think that they can wait out the clock, that they certainly will with him. And so time is important. And as well, I think we have to understand the cultural differences between our country and China in particular. We want everything right now. We expect immediate results. We can't even wait for this trade deal, right? We're like, what's the holdup, right? China is willing to wait for dynasties to pass, right? They have all the time in the world, right? You might have the watch, but we've got the time, is what they like to say. And I think we have to recognize that. And that's why I advocate for very robust and more significant actions on the part of the United States to force China into good behavior or else.